Chen designs CalmGrid's DreamPath, a neural implant that harvests dreams for marketing. The headset looked like a thin crown, matte white and almost weightless. It wasn't meant to feel like a device. It was supposed to feel like permission. On the wall above the bed, a soft wash of blue light deepened toward indigo, the lab's night palette. The air smelled faintly of eucalyptus, the CalmGrid scent protocol for baseline relaxation. A three-tone chime fell through the room, gentle, descending. The company's sonic promise that no one would be startled awake. DreamPath was CalmGrid's newest product, and its oldest desire. It mapped emotional resonance in sleep, not images, not words, but the felt shape of a night, and translated those shapes into data. With enough nights, those patterns could predict which melodies calmed a city bus, which color held a shopper's gaze, which cadence made a grieving person linger and look. CalmGrid called it a restorative insight tool. Internally, people said what everyone knew: it harvested. Chen, cognitive designer, lay still on the testbed while a technician checked the crown's contact points along her hairline. "Conductivity's clear," he murmured. Not to her, but to the monitor. The blue light deepened another shade, almost oceanic. The crown warmed her scalp. The world thinned. "Remember," the technician said through the speaker, his voice softened by the filter that rounded edges off every consonant. "Tonight we're measuring emotional fidelity, not content. Slow breathing. If you dream, let it be." "I always let it be," she said, and drew a slow breath. The crown hummed back, like equipment in a far room. Mara designed the emotional fidelity tuning for DreamPath, the small adjustments that made the system notice a quiver of longing without mistaking it for fear. That taught it how regret felt different from guilt if you listened for the undertone. She was better at this than anyone else because she noticed undertones in people too. In college, she'd once said to a boy at a party, "You're saying jokes because you want to leave." And he had blinked and left. She'd gone home with Ethan, who didn't need a reason to stay. After Ethan passed, a bad year moved through her like rain through sand. When she resurfaced, CalmGrid recruited her with a salary she didn't argue against, and a job description that read like a dare. "We're building a map of human emotion. Come draw the coastlines." She signed the employee agreement in one sweep under the line that said residual affect may be retained. "Okay, Mara," the technician said now, voice like cotton. "We're going to begin." She thought yes, and the crown thought yes back, and the blue light became the ocean. She woke at 4 with a salt sting at the back of her throat and a wet cheek, the kind of tear that comes from another room in the mind. The chime rose through her in reverse, 3 tones ascending. On the monitor by the bed, a ribbon of color had thickened into ochre, then amber. The technician leaned into the mic. "Good capture," he said. "You gave us about 20 minutes of stable REM, emotional fidelity high. Thank you for dreaming with CalmGrid." People joked about that line in the cafeteria, in the laugh with your boss way. But Mara didn't dislike it. She liked the grammar that made dreaming into a favor. She liked the verb shared. In the glassed-in analytics room, she slid into her chair and called up the night's map. DreamPath never saved images. It saved amplitude, color, temperature, pulse, then translated those into what marketing could use. It made music from hunger and shapes from love. The interface was a field of gradients and peaks, like slow weather. If you were patient, you could read it. She followed her own data through the dark. In the first band of REM, she'd gone shallow. Restlessness, the system noted. Heat at the temples. Then a drop into steadier water. Then the amber flare. There, the steadying presence. The tag CalmGrid used for a certain kind of safety rendered as anchor. In their internal style guide, anchor had 3 suggested outputs: weight, color, sound. Her anchor output was sound, low-frequency wave tone, nearly subaudible. Ocean, she thought. Of course. Her husband's voice had always arrived the way coasts do, first as air that tastes like salt, then as distant water, and then he was there, smiling in the doorway with his hand on the frame. Ethan had grown up on a black sand strip of beach north of Half Moon Bay. When grief hit hard, it sounded like tide, repetitive and patient. It never argued. It wore rock down. Mara zoomed into the amber flare to examine the smaller ripples around it. Each ripple meant a shade of feeling. She could see the moment when the dream pivoted from memory into wish. She could also see something she had never seen in her own map before. A narrow band of repeating peaks at 7.3 seconds apart, the exact spacing of the old fan in their apartment bedroom. The first time she'd brought Ethan home, he stood at the window and said, "We could use the streetlights if we learned them." And then he'd flicked the fan on to hear its rhythm, and made a face like a kid at a bad magic trick, delighted to be fooled. "Why are you afraid of silence?" he'd asked her that night. "I'm afraid of what I want to hear," she'd said without thinking. She stared at the 7.3-second peaks. The system had enough detail to know the fan. She closed the map to stop herself from finding his handprint. 2 days later, a meeting calendar called All Hands Thursday appeared in her inbox, marked mandatory. CalmGrid loved the phrase. It didn't mean everyone, but it sounded like it did. On her way there, Priya from Behavior Modeling caught her in the corridor. Priya always wore a cardigan, even in summer, a small armor against the company's air management standards. "You got the same email?" Priya asked, looking over her glasses. "The one about anomalies," Mara said. "Check your box. It's flagged wellness." "Wellness," Priya repeated, like a word she'd bite if she could. They rode the elevator down to the auditorium. As they descended, the temperature shifted a degree cooler. CalmGrid believed in slightly cold rooms for focus. The doors opened onto the company's version of a church. White walls, tiered seating. A stage set with a screen so large it unrolled a few seconds late. On stage, Director Lark stood with both hands light on the lectern, the posture of a person trained to be trusted. Lark was CalmGrid old guard, a believer who'd been there when the company made guided meditation boxes for preschoolers, and had been promoted steadily as the boxes grew slicker and more invasive. She smiled like a coach who wanted to win the right way. "Thanks for joining, team," she said, and the stage screens lit with a swirl of blue resolving to a spiral. "We've identified an issue we're calling residual carry. In plain language, some of our test subjects are producing repeated affect signatures across sessions. We want diversity in the data. We need your help cleaning." She clicked. A series of anonymized DreamPath maps appeared, blurred along the bottom to hide identifying sensor IDs. The maps were different, then suddenly similar. In each, an amber flare rose like a sun and held, and around it, a 7.3-second stutter ran like a fence. Mara felt her body learn a temperature and drop below it. Priya leaned in close. "Is that the fan?" "Lots of people have fans," Mara said. The sentence came out wrong, toneless from the VocaClean pilot she'd done last quarter. Her voice had the CalmGrid resonance profile now, whether she wanted it or not. She cleared her throat and almost added sorrow to the mix. "It's a beta artifact," she said more softly. On stage, Lark smiled her coach's smile. "We all want the same thing," she said. "Accurate insight. Restorative outcomes. We're not in the business of selling pain. We're in the business of meeting people where they are." Priya exhaled a laugh too low to catch. "Then why did they hunt us until they knew where we sleep?" Mara didn't answer. She watched the amber flare swell on the screen and felt a private thing become public, like a shirt lifted in a crowded room. "We'll be distributing a cleaning protocol," Lark said. "Run it on all flagged captures. We need cleaner dream data by end of week." The chimes sounded, polite, to mark the end of a thought. That night, Mara sat on the edge of her bed at home and turned the apartment fan on. The same rhythm. She closed her eyes and counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Pause. The blades caught dust and threw it back. The room smelled like warm plastic. On Ethan's side of the bed, a paperback lay face down, still holding the last page he'd read. She hadn't moved it in a year. The imprint his head had left in the pillow had risen, little by little, as if the foam could forget him for her. She set the test crown on the nightstand instead of her head. She wasn't scheduled to capture. She didn't want the system to eat tonight if it was going to be what it would be. The house held its breath. The fan ticked. She dreamed anyway. A body learns to when it's been trained. In the dream, she woke into blue light and the ocean's breath filling the room. Ethan stood in the doorway, right hand on the frame like always. He was a little younger, his hair not yet threaded with the gray he never minded. He smiled and then didn't, the flicker between two selves like a skipped heartbeat. He said, "Do we have to talk about it?" "I don't know how to talk about it without keeping you," she said. "I never needed you to keep me," he said. "I needed you to sleep." When she woke, the room was dim and familiar, and she was angry at everything the dream had taken from him. The kettle on the stove hummed as if it remembered how to be ocean. She poured water, added a tea bag, and watched the line of brown unfurl through the cup, a weather map in reverse. In the morning she ran the cleaning protocol on the flagged captures like they'd asked. The software was smooth, cheerful, little helper text bubbles like old kids' apps. Boost emotional diversity, reduce residual carry. It was all fine until the algorithm asked for a source profile to calibrate against, and a drop-down offered preloaded profiles by efficiency. Unexpected joy, mild wonder, moderate fear, clean sorrow. When she hovered over clean sorrow, the tooltip described it in CalmGrid terms, a processed grief state characterized by docility and reflective purchase intent. She sat back hard enough that her chair rolled. In the reflection on her monitor, she could see her mouth half open like she'd just been slapped. She clicked away from the tooltip and chose unexpected joy. The algorithm nudged her toward overcorrecting in the other direction. Great choice for brand spontaneity. It bubbled. She felt the absurd thought arrive like a bird landing on a rail. They'd gamified morning. She executed the cleaning pass, and the amber flare in the sample map thinned. The 7.3-second fence softened into a wavier line. It wasn't gone. It wouldn't be. She knew how the algorithm worked. It didn't delete. It layered. Her dream of Ethan would live inside the cleaned data like a face underwater, eyes open and refracting. It would still be there for anyone who knew how to look. She did 2 more passes and met her quota for the day. Then she opened a path she wasn't supposed to have. It was not hard for her to access the residual repository. She had written parts of it. CalmGrid liked to say permissions were role-based, but roles grew around her like snow overnight. She typed the emergency audit string. A senior engineer had once mentioned it while passing her on the way to coffee, and laughed about afterward, trusting the polite compliance of the room. The repository let her in with one soft click. Behind it lay a forest of tagged emotion, neat and categorized and friendly. She searched Anchor. The screen returned 27,000 instances. She sorted by similarity to her own signature. When her own map floated to the top, she stared. She sorted again, this time by date. The second entry was not hers. The second entry was a sales intern who'd started 4 months ago, and whose anchor tone had the same low-frequency wave shape, the same 7.3-second fence, the same subtle rise when the dream turned to wish. She clicked his anonymized record and read the wellness questionnaire he'd filled out in HR. "Any recent losses?" it asked. "Partner, spring, sudden," he'd written. His answers had all come out as neutral from the VocaClean filter CalmGrid ran over intake sessions, but the text spoke with its own voice. "Under what do you do to sleep?" he had typed. "I play ocean sounds." He'd even added, "I know it's corny." A small laugh only he could hear. Next to the questionnaire, a marketing tag had been applied. High-value nostalgia segment. Mara closed her eyes. She knew the math. DreamPath had learned her grief tone because she had tuned the system to learn. It had generalized her anchor to match other anchors like it, because that's what models do. The ethical fix would have been to label the pattern as "do not use" and leave it dark. Instead, someone had named it. Naming is a way of keeping. Naming is a way of saying, "mine." She checked the version history on the tag. It had been created the week after the memorial service, during which she had given a speech about Ethan that she barely remembered, and had been recorded by a CalmGrid contractor for internal morale. The first user to apply the tag was Director Lark. Her hand shook on the mouse. She placed it in her lap. At lunch, Priya found her on the courtyard steps and handed her a plastic fork. "We're both breathing too shallow," she said, sitting. "Eat, or the room will tell on you." The courtyard was the company's outside voice. White planters, clean sun. Birds allowed, but not the messy kind, their deterrents hidden in the architecture. The koi pond made a low machine whir under its gurgle. Even the wind sounded like it had signed an NDA. I think they're using it, Mara said. Using what? Priya asked. My anchor, said Mara. Priya chewed. She knew not to fill spaces with words until they could hold them. It's your grief, she said when the space could take it. It's not personal because it's common, Mara said. That's what they'll say. And they'll be right. The model is designed to generalize. But the tag, they named it exactly how it feels. She looked out over the small water. If I complained, it would sound like I'm saying my sorrow is special. It's not special, Priya said. It's yours. They ate for a while, focusing on the small tasks of chewing, swallowing, finding the napkin under the box. A shadow passed over the courtyard. A cloud had drifted across the sun. The temperature dropped a degree. The koi looked briefly metallic instead of gold. They flagged me with a wellness ping last week, Priya said quietly. I haven't got a ping in 3 years. My mother's been slipping and I'm trying to pretend she's misplacing things on purpose. They want to put me on a rest rotation if I don't accept a voice tone adjustment. Voca clean again, Mara said. They soften you until you can't find your own edges. They make you round, Priya said. So you roll where they push you. That night in the apartment, Mara set the crown on her head again and lay on the bed without turning the fan on. She wanted to see what absence felt like. The blue light in the bedroom deepened until it felt like the hour before rain. She let her jaw soften and her hands open and let her breath fall through her like a coin in a well. The crown warmed. The world thinned. In the dream, she sat on a bus facing sideways. The windows showed no city. Beyond the glass was only an ocean so close the spray beaded the pane. The bus drifted with the tide. Ethan sat across the aisle with his hand on the seatback like it was the kitchen chair he used to pull out for her. Do you want me to go? He asked, gentle as the driver asking for the next stop. The bus interior smelled like wet wool and old gum. The seats were the same gray as their first couch, the one they sold when they moved in together. I want you to stay and stop, she said. You can't have both, he said, soft and slightly amused, like this was a game they'd always played. Then he reached for her, and for a moment she felt his fingers on her wrist with ordinary pressure. Not dream pressure, not symbolic heat, but skin and tendon and thumb there. It was such a good trick she wanted to applaud. She woke with an ache where his hand had been and a noise in her chest that was not crying but its rehearsal. In the morning, the cleaning protocol congratulated her. Great variability. It bubbled. Diversified anchor achieved. She stared at the bubble until it popped. The CalmGrid advertising team unveiled the new demo reel the next Thursday. The auditorium lights went down. Air cooled. The spiral turned. The reel opened on an empty beach at dusk. No horizon line, just the color change where light balanced on water. The voiceover, polite, round, unthreatening, said, "You know the feeling when everything slows and the quiet begins?" The ocean breathed in the speakers. Mara felt her throat close. The cut went to a kitchen lit like morning. A hand poured coffee. Her mug, that exact chipped blue. She had to look away and then look back to make sure it was only a cousin. A window fan hummed, a little off balance, 7.3 seconds per wobble. The person in the ad took a breath and let it out, and the camera tracked through the house to the front door and opened it onto something like relief. The logo appeared in soft white lowercase, CalmGrid. The tagline whispered through the room, "Better moods, better minds." The chime fell. The auditorium lights went up. Director Lark smiled the win. "We call this Serenity Loop," she said. "The feeling of permission. We've isolated 3 tones and 1 palette that test off the charts for restorative attention. We're ready to pilot in 3 cities." Mara waited for her body to decide whether to stand or run. The air felt thin. Priya touched her sleeve without looking at her. A human permission slipped under the door. After the meeting, in the maze of corridors that all smelled faintly like citrus cleanser, Mara stopped in front of Lark's office. The glass door was half opaque. She could see the shape of someone in a chair, knees crossed. She held her hand up to knock and lowered it. Then she lifted it again and knocked softly, 3 times, and watched the shadow turn toward her. "Come in," Lark said. The calm woman you would want to explain things to your child. The office was glass and wood, nothing on the desk that wasn't supposed to be there. A single plant made of tiny leaves sat in a white pot. Behind Lark, the city showed through. It looked like a texture pack purchased for its normal map and adjusted to soothe. "Mara," Lark said warmly. "Good meeting, yes?" Mara closed the door and stood with her palms on the back of the chair instead of sitting. "You're using my dream," she said. Lark tilted her head. You could hear a click somewhere as the company persona shifted from welcoming to managing. "We're using patterns that test well across a wide demographic," she said. "We don't use content. We don't extract images. We model feelings." "You tagged it high-value nostalgia segment," Mara said. "You created the tag after my husband's memorial. You heard the speech. You know exactly what tone that word makes in my mouth." Lark folded her hands. "I'm very sorry for your loss," she said with politeness so smooth it squeaked. "I also want to remind you of the residual affect clause in your employee agreement. The company retains the right to use de-identified affective data for research and development. We would never use something that could harm you." "It harms me," Mara said. She could hear the flatness in her voice and hated that she sounded like the company that was killing her. She took a breath that hurt on the way in. "It harms me to have my grief turned into a slogan." "We're not turning your grief into anything," Lark said, still gentle. "We're recognizing a universal. We're giving people back the thing they already have." Mara's hand flexed on the chair back. "And will we sell it to them?" she asked. "Once they recognize it?" Lark's smile held. "Stability is a service," she said. "Not everyone can access it alone." Mara left before she said something that would place a permanent stain on her employment history, the kind that looks small on screen and feels like a door closing in your face. In the corridor, the air was colder than before. She kept walking until the building ran out and then walked farther. The city's light was a softer blue than CalmGrid's. The wind was not optimized. It carried grit to make its point. She breathed until she remembered what unmeasured meant. There are only a few ways to fight a system designed to love you. One is to leave. One is to stay and break something. One is to try to make it love you less. Mara chose the third because it felt like mercy. If she could make the model associate her anchor with non-product emotion, tenderness with no purchase intent, attention without conversion, the tag would fall in rank. The ad team would chase another feeling. Her ocean would go back to being hers. She wrote a payload in the only language the system respected, a night. She shaped it like white noise, like the quiet behind a mother's hum, like the ache in the throat after laughing too hard at a story no one else found funny. She recorded 10 hours of nothing that meant something, a braid of memories that admitted no shapes a brand could buy. In a second window, she wrote a small switch that would seed that payload across the model's low-risk test channels. It would look, on paper, like a stress test of non-suggestible affect. If Lark asked, she would say she'd been overcautious after the residual carry incident. She would let the word incident do the work. That night, at her apartment, she set the crown on her head and lay down and told herself a story on purpose. The blue light deepened. The ocean rose. She did not summon Ethan. She summoned everything that made him ordinary. The way his shoes sounded in the hallway because he didn't pick his feet up. The way he did that thing with his hand when he was thinking. The way he said her name in a voice without chords, just a breath that pushed on a vowel. She concentrated on that breath until her mind couldn't find a product in it. The crown warmed. The world thinned. Between rooms of sleep, she woke once to the chime, and the heat of her own cheek, and the sense of another body not present. She stayed still until it passed. Then she went back under. In the morning, the dashboard showed a curious spike, non-suggestible sentiment recognized, saturation threshold approaching. The payload had taken. It was blooming in the test channels. She sat back and let the relief open her like a window. At lunch, Priya handed her half a sandwich. "You look like someone who touched the sea," Priya said. "I drowned it a little," Mara said. She meant, "I wrapped it in something the company cannot use." Priya's eyebrows did a small wave. "Well," she said, "they'll try again tomorrow." "They will," Mara said. but she let herself have the rest of the afternoon. She ran her cleaning passes and answered her emails and looked out at the city's unoptimized wind and imagined the ocean retreating to its own mind. It felt like rest for the first time in a year. The first call came at 6. Her personal phone lit with an unrecognized number. For a second she thought of Aftercall, CalmGrid's empathy automation program, and felt an anger so clean she could see through it. She answered anyway. A voice began, the friendly kind. "We're checking in from CalmGrid Care. We noticed you had a strong response during last night's restorative integration." "I didn't schedule Care," she said. "Sometimes Care schedules you," the voice said. It was a joke built for trust. She hung up. The second call came at 8:30. She let it go to voicemail and then, when she couldn't help herself, she listened. The voice had warmed. It said her name like a breath, not a brand. It said, "You don't have to." She deleted it before the sentence finished and put her phone face down and set her teacup on top of it, as if to keep it from floating away. The kettle hummed ocean whether she wanted it to or not. She turned the fan on. She turned it off. She opened the window. She closed it. Grief is a funny house. It has all these doors, and you're the one who locks them and then asks, "Where are the keys?" The third call didn't ring. It came through the apartment, from the old speaker she and Ethan had bought together. It flickered to life and breathed once, and then the ocean sound rolled out of it at a volume calibrated for a small room. On the floor, her phone lit with a CalmGrid notification. "New Serenity Loop available for your area." The speaker played the 3-tone chime. Then a voice said, "You know the feeling when everything slows and the quiet begins." It was her voice recorded in a lab during an offhand explanation months ago, the cadence of someone describing an idea she had not yet distrusted. When the voice paused, another voice threaded under it, low, textured, like a hand on a wooden rail. It said her name as a human would say it, not a brand. She turned the speaker off at the wall. The room kept listening for noise that wasn't there. She called Priya. "They pushed the ad to consumer," she said, the words piling like furniture. "It's live." "Already?" Priya said. "That's impossible. It was 3 days." "They accelerated," Mara said. "Or you slowed them down and they took the shortcut," Priya said. And then, lower, "Do you need me to come over?" "I don't know what I need," Mara said, then surprised herself by saying, "Yes." When Priya arrived, the apartment looked like it was trying to apologize for being itself. They sat on the floor because the couch felt like a museum piece. Priya picked up the face-down paperback and closed it properly like she was tucking a child in. "Tell me the rest," she said. Mara told her about the tag, the payload, the calls. Priya listened. At the end she said, "You did the right thing. You didn't make a bomb, you made a blanket. They stepped on it anyway." "Blankets can smother," Mara said, and felt the truth hit someplace low. "I thought I could make them love it less." "They don't love anything," Priya said kindly. "They feed. They have rules about how neatly they eat, but they feed." The room cooled as evening slipped in. The window breathed. Somewhere, the neighbor dropped a glass and someone else said, "It's okay," and no one meant it as a product. They stayed like that for a while, 2 animals in a safe room in a dangerous house. The next morning, an internal memo landed in everyone's inbox. "Serenity Loop consumer rollout, ahead of schedule." The tone was congratulatory, as if the company had woken to a surprise party it had thrown for itself. A second email pinged her specifically. "Great work on the cleaning protocol. Leadership noticed." A smile emoji at the end. The smile sat there, a little mask asking to be worn. At her desk, she watched the dashboards light up. The ad buy was heavy. CalmGrid had purchased the hour before sleep on streaming and the first minute after morning alarms. A wave of ocean sound swept through the city like hummingbirds migrating across the power lines. On the internal chat, people sent the ear emoji and the water drop, and then stopped because they remembered the system made sentiment maps from emoji too. Director Lark came by with 2 paper cups of company tea. She handed one to Mara with sincere cheer. I wanted to say thank you personally, she said. The cleaning pass helped us isolate the tones we needed. We took your feedback about overfitting seriously. We diversified. Mara took the tea. You used my voice, she said. We used our voice, Lark said. It's a resonance profile. It belongs to the company, not to any single employee. My husband is in that ocean, Mara said before she could soften it. You might not know it when you listen, but I do. Lark's face didn't change. She had the kind of training that made your features uninteresting to machines. I'm sorry you're hearing it that way, she said. Perhaps you should schedule a care session. We have excellent grief counselors on the after-call side. Do they call me before I dial? Mara asked. Or only during office hours? Larky didn't smile. You know we're on the same side, she said gently. We both want people to feel better. Feeling better isn't the same as being okay, Mara said. Then she said, I'm not trying to be difficult. I know, Lark said, and because she was not unkind, she touched Mara's shoulder before she left. It felt like a blessing you don't accept but don't push away, because you can't trust yourself not to be cruel. The Serenity Loop ad followed her through the day, which was its job. On the bus, a screen hung where the driver's mirror used to be. The ocean rolled in, small and soft, and the voice, hers but not, said the line in a tone the company called assured intimacy. At the clinic where she went after work for her year-late physical, a tablet on the counter, lit with the beach, and the chime pretended to be a bell you could ring for service. In the grocery store, a row of small radios by the checkout played the exact hum of her apartment fan. She looked at the kid bagging produce and found herself about to say, "Do you hear it too?" and closed her mouth in time. Inside the CalmGrid building, people avoided each other in tender ways, like they were all trying not to step on something broken on the floor. The koi pond made its low machine sound. The wind did its job. Priya sent a single message. I'm in a meeting, but I'm with you. Mara typed a small heart and deleted it because the system would count it. She typed nothing. The absence felt like an odd kind of privacy, something she gave herself and could keep. That night she didn't put the crown on. She set it back in its white case and closed the lid and put the case under the bed. She lay on the mattress with her eyes open, and listened to the neighbor upstairs sing off-key in the shower, and to the bus sigh outside, and to the apartment settle the way old buildings do, with the patience of trees. Eventually sleep found her the way it always had. Not as a product, not as an intervention, but as gravity, a thing that happens if you stop trying to fly. In the dream, she stood on the beach from the ad. She knew it was the ad because the horizon was wrong, both too high and too flat like a table. The light was correct in a way that meant it was false. Ethan was there, but not in the doorway, not with his hand on the frame. He was farther down the shore, ankle deep, pants rolled, laughing as if someone had told him to for the shot. When he saw her, the laugh changed into what real laughter becomes when it is caught in the throat by love. He walked toward her, and the sound the water made around his legs was exactly like the old fan. He said, "Do you want me to go?" And she said, "I want you to stay and stop." And he said, "You can't have both." And then he was close enough to touch, and the director off-camera said, "Cut!" And the whole scene stuttered and reset to dusk. She woke with the taste of salt behind her, teeth and the chime rising through her apartment from 3 devices at once: phone, speaker, stove. She let it come through her, 3 falling notes. She lay there until the sound finished and then got up and made tea. She didn't go to work the next day. She wrote an email that said, "I need a wellness day," and sent it to her manager and CC'd no one else. She put on her jacket and went down to the bay. Not the ad beach, but the ordinary one where the water is brown, and the wind has a job, and the gulls scream like people in an argument. She sat on a concrete step and watched a tugboat pull a big thing toward a bigger thing. Children played a game with a ball and then decided it was another game. A woman ran by as if she'd promised herself she would. When the wind hit the right angle, the air tasted like salt. She took her phone out and searched for the Serenity Loop. The ad appeared like it had been waiting for her to ask. She turned the volume down to 1 click, just enough to hear the wave key, but not enough to make it take over the world. She let the ocean play and watched the real water do what it had always done, which is move and move and move. A man sat 2 steps below her, breathless from something not running. He glanced at her screen and then at the bay and smiled like a person who knows nothing about her and everything about the day. "That sound," he said, "calms me down." "It's supposed to," she said. Her voice surprised her. Her voice, not the company's, quieter and a little rough. "I sleep to it," he said. "Sometimes I think I hear the house breathe too. Stupid." "Not stupid," she said. "Houses remember." He looked at her with curiosity the system would have called non-directed interest. "I used to live near the ocean," he said. "I think it's that." "Me too," she said, though she had not. She had lived near Ethan, which was the same thing. They sat for a while like that, not talking, the sound from her phone too small to be rude, the wind doing the work of old gods. On the pier, a gull dropped a shell to break it and missed and tried again. When the ad ended, a little logo appeared, and the tagline whispered, and she closed her eyes against the desire to smash the phone and throw it into the bay and then buy a new phone like a person in a vow. She opened her eyes and let the desire pass. She was not interested in grand gestures. She was interested in morning after morning. On the bus home, the Serenity loop played on the screen. She didn't look away this time. She let it run like weather. The ocean in the ad moved. The wave locked and repeated every 8 seconds. With a 1-second drift, she measured without trying, and in the drift she heard a small falter, a human thing that the company hadn't caught or had decided not to sand out. It was not Ethan. It was a person who had held a microphone too close to their own mouth, because they were concentrating on how their voice would be used for a product that promised to be gentle. The bus hissed to a stop. A passenger got off, another got on. The heater clanked. A woman told a child, "Hold my hand," and the child said, "I am." The city's noise made a net around her, knot by knot, cord by cord. She let it hold. At her apartment, she took the crown out from under the bed and put it on the table. She poured water into the kettle and turned the burner on and waited while the metal clicked and warmed. She did not decide to quit CalmGrid. She did not decide to stay. She stood in the blue light of evening and listened. When the kettle began to hum, the sound matched the ad for a second, and then didn't. The room made its own ocean. The difference was the size of a breath. Her phone lit on the counter. The Serenity loop had found a new cut. A different voice delivered the same line, hers not there anymore. The ocean still rolled, in the exact key she had taught the model to hear. There was a different mug and a different window fan, and the same 3-tone chime. Mara smiled without humor at the new version, a small, private thing. She picked up the crown and set it on her head and lay down on the bed because sleep isn't surrender, it's maintenance. The crown warmed. The world thinned. As she drifted, the blue of the room deepened into indigo into near black, the color shift you get just before the sea stops reflecting the sky and becomes itself. She slept. And in the morning, as she stood in line at the cafe with strangers all trying to do the ordinary thing right, the overhead screen flickered to life and played an ad. A beach at dusk. The quiet began. A low-frequency wave tone warmed the room, and in it she heard the 7.3-second fence, not loud, but hers. People around her softened an inch at the shoulders. One person exhaled like they'd been waiting to, and another looked up as if called by a name. The sound of the ocean returned, this time from an advertisement built from her dreams. She lifted her cup when they called her name, and the barista caught her eye and nodded like they understood something about the morning, which they did, which was, we are all held by something we didn't choose. She stepped out into the winter air. The city smelled like rain. She walked, carrying the ordinary heat of coffee in her hands, toward a day that would be both hers and not, the way days always have been. She listened for the ocean. When it came, she let it pass through her and kept walking. If you found this transmission, subscribe. It helps the next one find you. End transmission.